Well, good morning, everybody. I've been here 37 years, and my business will turn 35 on April 1st. So I've been here quite a while. I've seen West Palm Beach change over the years from a place that was very run down in the 1980s. Very few activities on Clematis Street, very few things to touch, because everything was closed. And to see it thriving now, it's really been great. It's gone through several cycles. In the 1990s, I would say, was the first, really first bump of rediscovery of the city and the street. And then, of course, before COVID, and now it's like post-COVID, right, or this new period, it's a boom, right? It's really a time of unlike any other. Even more so, I think, than the 1920s, when this area was just an amazing place with a lot of jungles. And very few people, but a lot of growth. The historic buildings in our downtown, Flagler bringing the railroad all the way down to Key West, with opportunities to get on a ferry and go to the Bahamas and Cuba. Back then, things that we can't do anymore, but just an incredible way of getting from up north down here. And today, you see the same thing, but different ways of transportation, right? You might have seen the article in the paper about all the jets. Right, it's all, those poor people, right? They're all crowded on the south side, have nowhere to park their jets and get to the island or wherever else they're going. Well, it was the same 100 years ago. People would come down in the trains in their Pullmans or private Pullmans. There was a bridge that would bring you from downtown for the trains, and they would park you at the breakers, and you could be at the breakers for January, February, March. Or if you were brave, you could continue on the train all the way down to Key West, and which was a very large city, by the way, one of the largest cities in Florida 100 years ago. And then you could have said, oh, I'm bored of Key West, let's go to Cuba, and then go to Cuba on your Pullman, and then travel Cuba east-west. Cuba had the third most advanced economy after the United States and Canada 100 years ago. So you could do all sorts of things and then go back home in the summer. Our city was very thriving in that it founded in 1894 on Clematis Street. It was just an outpost like Fort Lauderdale in Miami, next to the water, the New River and then Miami River, so they could trade with the Indians, and the only way to get around, this was the highway. The way we're traveling today, this was the main street. There was, military trail and and US 1 was really a rough trail, but it would take you quite a while to get down south. We were part of Dade County till 1909. And back then, it used to be whoever had more people would be the county seat. So some years it would be Miami, other years West Palm had more people. They'd move all the government up here. So you could see them getting kind of frustrated, right? Especially if it takes you a week or two to walk down there, to get down there, or the same thing coming up here. So right now we're on, this is Southern Boulevard, right? In this area, this was actually the boonies back then. I mean, people that lived in Palm Beach between Worth Avenue and Main Street, that was it. This was considered nothing. This was like, I can't think of a place around here. Everglades City today, right? I mean, something very, very remote. And so Mar-a-Lago, for example, which is a building that we've been working on for the past 25 years, that property, was created by Meriwether Post, and this amazing architect, interior designer, theater designer named Joseph Urban from New York, who did the Follies. He did the Follies in New York. He did a lot of theater work up there. And so that's why Mar-a-Lago, I think, is so theatric, right? Because he brought that special touch to create this phenomenal building, this house, and she wanted the best house. She actually found the property. She said, I want it on a high piece of land. There's a ridge, right? There's a ridge along the coast. Unlike if you go down to Fort Lauderdale or Miami, the water is like, the beach is here and the water's like a foot or two down. We have a good buffer, which we haven't had to use it for a hurricane, but if we ever do have a hurricane, a big one, we're going to have some good protection there. So she found the ridge and she hired him to do the designs for this property. It's a U shape, kind of semicircular, with the tower that you can see over there in the middle. And because it's radial or U-shaped, then wings could come off of the building. Today, the Trump family lives in one of the wings. That's their home. You know, it's a club, but it's also their home. And a lot of credit, whether you like his politics or not, to him for saving a huge white elephant that nobody wanted. After Meriwether Post died, she gave it to the federal government. They said, we don't want this. We can't maintain this. They gave it to the state of Florida. The state said, we don't want this. And then eventually Trump found out about it, and he lived in it as a house for 10 years, and then turned it into a club to help pay for the historic upkeep. And today, most large historic places need to have an economic sustainability program. Because otherwise they're just going to die. They're just going to run out. So we're fortunate, I think, unlike Miami and Fort Lauderdale, that we have a lot of history still in our city, in our downtown, along the waterfront. On both sides of the waterfront, you'll see estates on the Palm Beach side, and you'll see some very nice big homes on the other side. Let's see what else. The Intracoastal was considered back then, it was a lake. It wasn't actually connected to the ocean. There was Little Lake Worth, which is North Palm Beach. You know where Lost Tree Village is up there, and Oakbrook Square? That was a little lake, Little Lake Worth, and this was called Big Lake Worth. And it was, all right, we got a plane. Everybody wave. Called the community around the lake. There was no Palm Beach, there was no West Palm Beach. It was all people thriving, living, working, harvesting, touching, doing all the things that you needed to do to create community, right? And then of course over the years, Palm Beach got a little bit nervous and they incorporated because they didn't want to become part of West Palm Beach. Like for example, Singer Island and Riviera Beach, that's one city, right? And so we do have these two cities now, the West Palm Beach side and the Palm Beach side. If you're wondering, well, who was the first, chicken or the egg? So West Palm Beach was built up by Flagler to have the manpower to form and build Palm Beach. So just think about this. At one point, Palm Beach had the largest hotel in the world, over 1,000 rooms. Big mistake, they built it out of wood. Big mistake. Someone left, wood. They built it out of wood, so someone left a cigar, the thing went up in fire, right? The Breakers, everybody knows the Breakers Hotel, right? It burned too. And these fires were spectacular, right? Because there wasn't large fire trucks to service something like that. So of course it went up in smokes, right? And the embers fell on other buildings nearby, and just a lot of destruction. In fact, when West Palm Beach started building itself in the 1910s and 1920s, the bigger buildings were built what was called fireproof construction. So the Como building on Clematis Street, the courthouse that we restored, those were all concrete and steel buildings. Why? Because very recently in the United States, in Chicago, Jacksonville, and Baltimore, they all burned. They're all wood construction. So like in Palm Beach, everybody stopped building in wood. And then the Breakers, the new Breakers, which we're going to drive by, we'll see in a few minutes, was built out of terracotta stone, concrete and steel in 11 months, okay? As an architect, I can't get a permit in 11 months. It's impossible right now, right? There's so much over-regulation, they won't give us the paperwork. So imagine in the 1920s, 100 years ago, building that thing in 11 months. So that required a lot of people, and those people needed a place to work and to live and to go to school, their children. So the downtown was the first area. And then to the south and the north, we got a whole bunch of historic neighborhoods. Over here in the south side, we have El Cid, closer to downtown, Parkland over here, I think, and south of Southern over there. So you have, and then behind those neighborhoods, Flamingo Park, Grandview Heights, and other historic districts. And then to the north, it's Northwood. It's a Northwood, but it's a whole bunch, like 5 or 6, Harbor, Northwood Harvard, Northwood Hills, on the north side of downtown. And that's really how the city formed. In fact, I live in Montecito by the Marriott. That was all muck. The lakes that you see over there, the edges of those lakes went all the way up to Tamarind, where Tamarind is right now, Parker. That was all water, all the way till you got to Lake Okeechobee, and then around the lake there's another ridge there, and that was Canal Point, Pahokee, Belglade, all those cities, all the farming, and then they would bring all those fruits and vegetables to the turning basin in Howard Park. Everybody know where Howard Park? When you drive into West Palm Beach on the right side after the tracks, there's a park. There's a lake there today. That was the turning basin. That's where they would bring all the fruit and vegetables. And then the real green market was there on Saturdays, where you could touch your fruit and vegetables, right? and decide what you wanted to buy and take home. And that was the way life was, until they started building the highways, the US 1 and other things. I remember I moved here in 1985. I-95 did not connect. I-95 stopped at, what the horror, right? Stopped at PGA, and then I think Fort Pierce was where it picked up again. I think it was like 1988, 1989 that it finally connected, you know? So a lot of transportation issues, a lot of good things the city's doing right now. For example, right now you look to the east, to the west side, they're building more mangroves to clean the water. I mean, this water became, when they opened it up and connected to the ocean, it became very dirty. You know, they would dump the sewage here. That doesn't happen anymore, but it's been a while cleaning it up. Our fresh water comes in from our lakes on the west side of town. When you come on I-95, you see two lakes on either side of Okeechobee Boulevard. Are you guys familiar with that, right? You can't touch that water. You know, that water is sacred right now, because that's where we get our fresh water, and it's serviced there at the station on Banyan and Tamarind, and that's how we get the water for West Palm, for Palm Beach, and for other communities around here, right? So these marshes, or these areas, these mangroves, you know, are going to help filter and bring back life like they did downtown. We have a couple that you can walk to in our downtown area. So you can see a lot of the historic homes. Some of them have widow's walks. For example, that one over there has a beautiful widow's walk, very popular up in places like Nantucket, right, and Martha's Island, waiting for someone to come. Northwood Hills. Anybody live in Northwood Hills? Has the highest point, and there's a 3-story house over there that used to run the rum in the 1920s from the Bahamas. So there's some great stories and some great houses in Northwood Hills. Yes? A widow's walk came from Nantucket, and unfortunately was called Widows. Oh,
it's the balcony on the top.
On top of the roof, because God forbid the captain didn't come back and you became a widow. So she would walk up there and look for the whaling ships to come back in, and hope that her husband made it back home, right? Otherwise, she was a widow walking on the widow's walk. Okay? All right, so let's see. So now as we get closer to our downtown, our core downtown, south of downtown we have Palm Beach Atlantic University and churches, and the churches have been selling some of their land, leftover land, for high rises. So we got 2 or 3. We'll probably have like 10 new high rises south of downtown. And north of downtown, all the way to Curry Park, which I think we're going to try to go to Curry Park, another 10 to 20. And some of those are going to be very large. So the character of West Palm Beach is changing. You'll see, unfortunately, some houses have been torn down and replaced with McMansions. It's happening from Miami Beach all the way up to here, everywhere in the state. You know, people seem to have a need for big spaces, and taking away the historic character of what defines this place. We've been fortunate. We've worked on the courthouse building in downtown, the Harriet over at City Place, the square. We did that building too, and a couple of other smaller buildings. And pretty soon, when we cross the bridge, we're going to see the Christian Scientist Church, which is being preserved as part of a new high-rise office building that related this building. Were the original developers of the City Place area. And I would say they have the majority of stock and control of our downtown today, right? They own all the office buildings, most of them, and they're building a lot of things in our downtown. For example, that's a brand new building right there. The blue one's a brand new building. These are very expensive buildings. I have a client that bought an apartment on the 9th floor for $7 million. They're over 1,000. Some of them are $2,000 a square foot, compared to what we usually pay, which is $200 to $400 a square foot, right? I think I could buy, sell 10 of my apartments to get one, the smallest one. Not that I want to do that, because I'm happy with a small apartment. I can lock it up, and I love it because you can lock up and travel and go, and you don't have to worry about the lawn or security or anything like that. But they come with a huge amount of amenities. They're very well amenitized. As we come by the docks over here, 2 years ago we renovated with an engineering group the docks, and there's 3 tiny little buildings that we designed and built, which are the dockmaster and restrooms for the marinas. Enormous amount of revenue for the town of Palm Beach. In fact, they had calculated, I think they said they were calculating about $3 million a year, and it's more like there's more like $4.5 million. They're making a lot of profit because all the big ships want to be here, right? This is like ground zero, right? Ken Griffin, right? Who's the big guy that's got the huge office down in Miami, has a big house. He's put together 100 acres. He's paid over $100 million for a piece of land. He bought 2 historic homes in Miami on the waterfront, $100 million. And he just goes on and on, right? I mean, those are the kind of people that are coming here. The New Day people, the people that found helping veterans, they moved their headquarters. They liked it here so much, they moved their executives downtown. They liked it so much, they said, the hell with Maryland, we're moving the whole company. And they're now, if you go to City Place, the new tower at City Place, it has the New Day sign above. 1,000 employees are coming to West Palm, right? If you don't own your apartment, buy it, right? Because the rents are going up, right? And hopefully, and the same thing with your office space. If you can buy something, buy it, because you can't go wrong in West Palm Beach. At least I think for the next 10 years, it should be a very, very busy time in our city. So you can imagine, right? It's changed over time, and 130 years. It might not seem like a lot of time, but in Florida, that is a lot of time. It's also beautiful, like other places around the world, like Paris with the bridges. You see people walking and riding their bikes, from one side to the other. You see such an investment in our downtown. And very importantly, the government in the 1970s, when things were kind of sketchy downtown, Palm Beach County government and West Palm Beach government and federal government stayed downtown. Over by the airport, they built the jail. Have you seen the jail out by the airport? They were going to move the entire county operations out there. If they would have done that, just kiss goodbye, shut down downtown, it would have been a horrible story. So by the stroke of luck, miracles in the 70s, they stayed, and it was important because jurors and others would shop in the few shops and eat in the few restaurants that were on Clematis Street, And after that scare, we had a change of government in 1990. It's a strong mayor. And we were fortunate that our first mayor was a real strong mayor, Nancy Graham. She was a great go-getter. She hustled to redo the downtown. We redid the fountain area, the amphitheater, all of the park, the waterfront park with Lois Franco. So a lot of public reinvestment. And when the public reinvests, the private sector then comes and does their buildings, So it was a way of showing good faith, that if you come and you build a beautiful building in downtown, the city government will take care of improving or taking care of the other facilities. Can't see my little buildings because the boats are really big. But they're huge, right? There's the college right there. There's Palm Beach Atlantic. Maybe. All right, steady. There's one. You can see that's the 2-story one, and that has the police upstairs. The little building over there in the water. And what was nice is the town of Palm Beach, they do everything Class A. So instead of just a parking lot for the boaters, they did a park. There's a linear park. There's parking for the boaters, but there's also a beautiful park with a walkway. I love to when I go to the beach, I love to take the parkway there and go that way. Our bridges are finally done. Each one of them took 5 years to build. Can you believe that? That one took 6 years. It was horrible. The first one was built, that one was built in the 1930s after the rail line. And then you'd have to pay a nickel to cross to be able to go to pay for it, right? Kind of like our tolls today, right, on the turnpike, right? They're always charging us money. These are established mangroves over here, right? And you can get to them. There's these little finger piers. You can see the walkways, and they're beautiful areas to see. You can see fish and all sorts of things and birds in our downtown. These old buildings over here are from the first later boom, 1980s, Esperante, Phillips Points, and these two were called Trump Towers. And 505 older buildings along Flagler. And then in the early 2000s on Banyan, on Datura Street, right by where we park, the apartment buildings. And then now we have the bigger buildings, right? We've got what I call the Miamification of West Palm, unfortunately. Jeff Green, crazy lunatic, is building those two big monstrosities over there. Ask me how I feel about those, right? Don't walk around there because the glare from the sun at this time of the day hits the glass and then it vaporizes you as you walk by it, right? But the rest of our downtown is beautiful. I fell in love with this downtown because it had many things going. It had historical buildings. It had a grid, perfect little grid like Chicago, like New York. Not like Miami. Miami doesn't have a good grid. Miami has Brickell and the other street north of it, and it's all crazy, you know. I mean, it does have some grid, but this is a very well defined from lake to lake. And from bridge to bridge, lake to lake, it's 100 blocks. It's a small neighborhood, right? It's 9 blocks this way and 11 blocks from bridge to bridge, 100 blocks, right? So in theory, you should be able to walk anywhere, right? And the city's done a very good job in the last 10 years demanding that all the new developers put shade trees. So you've probably seen a lot of shade trees, right? And they're maturing now. So for example, Olive has beautiful shade. You can drive or walk or ride your bike on Olive and you get shade all the time, which we need, right? It's too hot. I mean, it's February and it's what, 80 degrees or whatever, right? So it's a good way to do that. Mayor Frankel did these piers in the waterfront, and the piers were a part of activating the waterfront. So they have business uses like the kayaks. A lot of us wish there were more uses. I was in Porto, Portugal in October. What a waterfront. I mean, packed with restaurants and people and walking, and they had the similar two sides of the river, and they had an aerial gondola from one side to the other, right? I mean, just really cool. You know, I wish we would do cooler things with our waterfront and not just save it for Sunfest and for the boat show, you know? So hopefully that'll get better, that waterfront area. The Flagler, so Henry Flagler, this was a cottage that he built for his third wife. Yes. And at one point it had a 10-story hotel. He had a hotel in the back. And it's now one of the best house museums in the country. So if you haven't been there, go and take a visit. They also have tea in the afternoon. So if you like to do those kind of things, it's a lot of fun. And it's like walking back in time to the 1920s. You know, it's a really, really beautiful property over there. We're coming up to the Royal, and you've all been to the Royal, yes? Shopping and dining, right? I wish, no, you gotta go, Michael. You have to, okay? I wish we had a Royal in West Palm, right? Because the one thing I'm not happy about Clematis is there's no retail, right? It's all cafes or bars or CB, you know, marijuana station. You know, it's like, where's the retail, right? So hopefully bring some of that to Clematis and our downtown. This is the Palm Harbor Marina, also been here for ages. They used to fly seaplanes from here. So they used to, just on the north side of the bridge, you see how open the water is over there? In the 30s, they would have seaplanes that would take off and go to the Bahamas. Have you ever been on a seaplane? Nobody? I've been. It's the scariest experience ever. I flew from Miami on the ground to the Bahamas in the water, and the landing is pretty sketchy, right? Because you're landing and there's water everywhere. It's a little, but it's fun, right? Yeah. A little bit. So all sorts of things in our downtown. Anybody have any questions about West Palm or Palm Beach? How long have you been here? Who is not from here? Who moved here? Okay. Who moved here 40 years ago, almost 40 years ago? Okay. Who moved here 30 years ago? Okay. Who was born here? Okay, we do have some locals. Okay, good. All right. Who has been here just 20 years? Races over here. You know, so they'd have in a circle, they'd have these big boat races, small boats, you know, Chris Craft type boats, you know, wooden boats from the 30s. Very popular.
They have to dredge this to make it as wide as it is, or was this natural?
This was natural. This is remember it was a lake, really. The whole piece all the way down there to Palm Beach Gardens. The inlet is a new inlet. A hurricane hit through there and it changed the inlet, and then they widened that up, and then with the spoils, when they cleaned the dirt from the water, they created Peanut Island. So Peanut Island is a man-made island. Have you been to Peanut Island? Have you been snorkeling to Peanut Island? On the Hakuna Matata, right? You can touch a lot of sea animals and a lot of cool things snorkeling underneath the water up in Peanut Island. It's really a nice day trip. There's also a water taxi from the Riviera Beach Marina. For $7 you get a round trip, and it's every 20 minutes. So you can get there like at 10 in the morning and come back at 3 or 4 or 5 in the afternoon and spend a nice day on the island. And then on the north side of Peanut Island, they have one of the best snorkeling spots in North America. Right there at the bridge, that whole park there, underneath the bridge, is spectacular. I mean, all sorts of sea creatures. What's that? Phil Foster Park, thank you. So there's 2 locations where you can go and spend a day and have a great time. We're going by Providencia Park over here on the west side. You can see the banyan trees and the coconut trees. So there was a boat called the Providencia that shipwrecked in Palm Beach in the 1880s, and it had 2,000 coconuts. So what did they do with the coconuts? They planted them, and what happened? Palm trees came up, and then someone said, why don't we call this place Palm? Oh, and beach, right? Let's call it Palm Beach. So that's how we got our name, Palm Beach. And then I guess we said, well, we're next to Palm Beach, but we're on the west side. So let's call ourselves West Palm Beach. Okay, not like Lake Worth, right? That just changed their name, right, Jimmy, to Lake Worth Beach, in case you didn't know where you were, right? You want to make sure you're in Lake Worth Beach. There's the lake and then there's the beach. I guess that was their claim to fame now, and I wish them well. We have our hospital, oldest hospital, Good Sam, I understand from the early 1900s. On the north side, there's a neoclassical small 2-story building, which was the original. The structure that you're seeing here is mostly, not all of it, but mostly 1930s Art Moderne style architecture. And then the glass portion was added 20 years ago. They made a huge renovation. And they just built a new building on the left side for another medical institute. And the white building is their office tower where all the doctors are located. The same thing with the yellow one over here. So when Nancy Graham got elected back in 1990 and changed the government and changed Clematis Street and really started bringing this town out of the dumps into something worthwhile, we had a master plan done in 1994 with Dwani Platter-Zyberg, famous architects from Miami. And for a week, everybody came and participated. And from that plan, you see the reality today. A lot of the buildings along Quadrille, they're about 8 stories tall, right? So all of those buildings were part of the master plan to keep a uniform height. It's very nice, right? They're all different, but they have a uniform height. They're all residential with mixed use on the first floor. When we built all those apartments, other people, we brought 5,000 people back to downtown. If you would have been here 20s, 30s, 40s, and even 50s, there were thousands of people living, working in our downtown. You know, maybe some of them would live off of El Cid to the south or Northwood to the north, but the work was here, right? So you could imagine very walkable, very connected type of things that we're trying to do today, connecting the city, multimodal. I came in my bike today. I try to use my bike several days a week to go to work. You can see people on the scooters or the circuit. Have you ridden the circuit? Yeah. That's nice, right? Isn't that great? You can go drinking and don't have to worry about parking. And you know, having a car is like having a ball and chain, right? If you think about it, right? I mean, at the end of the day, if we get rid of cars, it will be a little bit easier. You know, you can take the circuit, you can take the trolley. Have you seen the trolleys, right? They go everywhere in our downtown. Other cities are doing that. If you've taken the Bright Line, how many people have taken the Bright Line? All right, everybody. Okay. Isn't that fun, right? Right? Especially, we love to go to the Miami Heat. Right, Jim? We'll grab a couple of drinks, maybe a second round of drinks. Then you don't even notice that you walk 3 blocks to the arena, go to the game, have some more drinks, come back to find the train station on time. That's important. That's important. You don't want to miss that train. My wife missed it the other day. She took her girlfriends to the game, and they paid $100 on the Uber to come back, you know. But between 4 girls, I guess it was okay, you know. But don't miss the train and then come home, right? And then you can walk back, or again, the circuit. They're connecting everything, really nice. And they just opened Boca and Aventura. And Aventura is where?
North of Miami.
Next to the Aventura Mall. Come on, ladies. I mean, come on. You know, I mean, oh my God. The other days I was coming back and people with bags getting into the train, and I smiled because that's great that you can actually go shopping and bring your bags in the train and come home and not have to, you know, take the exit from I-95 is one of the worst when you go to Aventura, right? So getting those cars off the road. We're coming over here to a project that's near and dear. My father designed this project 30 years ago. It's the Martin Luther King Memorial, Ricardo the First. And I forgot to tell you, I'm Ricardo the Second, and Ricardo the Third is over there next to Britt, my son. Wave. Wave. And he joined our company last April, so we're happy to have him working with us. We need young blood, and boy, he's really helped us with our marketing efforts. So thank you, Ricardo. But Dad did that. And over here, Curry Park is going to get redeveloped. $32 million. The city just awarded the contract to redo Curry Park. And it's going to be a hell of a park. It's going to have mounds and water features, areas to play, tennis, basketball, soccer, boating on the north side. And then it's going to connect to Northwood Road. Have you all been to Northwood, the little bohemian district of our downtown, right? Northwood is also getting a big project on the west end. So the theory, they say, is anchors, right? You got big project on the west. God help us, Jeff Green controls a lot of this area on the east side. Hopefully we'll get some nice buildings. And then the quirky, historic, funky village in the middle. Yes, sir, Britt.
Tell us how you really feel about Jeff Green.
I think you know by now. There's a lot. In fact, they're building some more of the smaller buildings right now, residential buildings in this area. It's not downtown, but it's still a very nice neighborhood because it does have shops. Actually, it has a lot more shops than Clematis. You know, there's a lot more fun things to do on Northwood Road than on Clematis Street. Although all our festivals and everything are down there. There used to be a very nice, what was it, Britt? The fish market, seafood festival.
Yeah.
Do they still do it?
Yeah.
They still do it. So if you like seafood, come up here in March, I think it is, right? Or April? March.
I think you're right. April.
March, April. Great seafood festival up here. Reggae bands, great food, great times. Right on the water. Look at this. It must be like 80 degrees, right? And there's not a drop of air in the space. So that big building on the horizon, that's more or less where Peanut Island is at that location. And then if you went out to the ocean, you have Singer Island, which has some of the most beautiful beaches. And actually from there north, I lived in Juno Beach for 13 years. And those are some of the best beaches, I think, in all of Florida. Juno, Jupiter. If you have a dog or a pet, that's a great area to go take your pet. There's a fishing pier up there too, you know, and it's all very close. It's a 15, 20-minute drive from the West Palm Beach area. How many of you live in near downtown or in the downtown area? Okay, we have a couple.
I have a parking spot downtown.
Okay.
It's $3,200 a month, but it comes with an apartment.
Oh my God. Wow. Okay, so maybe more of you will come downtown and have less commute. Any questions? Anything about Palm Beach? This is the house over here with a tower. That's the first building that was built in Palm Beach. And it was a church, and it was purchased by a private individual about 25 years ago, I think, 25, 30 years ago. And he turned it into the coolest house in Palm Beach.
There's a restaurant on Peanut Island. There ever be a restaurant there again?
I think so. The Peanut Island was controlled by Riviera Beach, and they just gave it back to the county. That part where you're talking about where the Coast Guard used to have a station, and they had a little cafe which was great. You could bring your boat or come in the right and just enjoy food there. But I think they're going to be renovating all of it, including there's a Kennedy bunker. There was a bunker that was built there during and after 1962 when the missile crisis with the Russians, because Kennedy lived around there on the ocean side, so they can hop them on the boat, speedboat, and take them to the bunker and go underneath for months if necessary, if all hell would have broken up. I was growing up in Miami at the time, and I remember in school, St. Peter and Paul in downtown Miami, in 2nd, 3rd, and 4th grade, we would have exercises of getting underneath our benches, our school benches, and then drills getting out, like getting under a bench and a nuclear bomb hits. But that was the thinking back then. Somebody had a hand up. Yes. Yes. I think they already have. Yes, I had a client that came in and he bought an oversized lot with a house, and he paid a little bit under $3 million. And he's got to gut it and redo it because it hasn't been redone, but it's already happening. Unfortunately, what's happening along the waterfront is that a lot of the homes are being demolished and replaced with McMansions, like in Miami Beach, like in Fort Lauderdale. So that's a problem right now, right? That people are, how should I say, touching those houses in the wrong way, demolishing them. Yes, sir.
Any recommendations on how we could get involved and sort of help the government understand that we want to maintain as much of the history as we have?
That's a great question, Adam. I gave a lecture on Monday night at the library about 100 years of the city, and that question came up. And the answer is get involved at the city commission meetings. Write letters to the editor, to the newspaper. I mean, we have to get engaged. We're not being vocal, and it's all going to disappear. Look at this election that was canceled, right? Because of fear, or whatever, because of a technicality. I've been here since the mid-'80s. Rodney Mayo's been here since the 70s, I mean, they didn't give the guy a chance, okay, whatever, but let's be vocal. You know what they did? They changed public comment from the beginning of the meeting to the end of the meeting. So if you're an older person, right, and you walk there for the meeting, now you got to wait 3-4 hours, that's to stop public comment. I mean, that's what our nation was built on, right? Freedom of expression. Yeah. And we're not doing that. We're not doing that in West Palm Beach right now. It's just re-elect people, get them in, and keep them. And the status quo is not a good thing on the long run for any city.
Were you here when there was the Palm Beach Grand Prix for auto racing?
Yes, that's right. We did have that along the waterfront over here.
For us auto racing fans, what can we do to bring that back?
Bring that back. Well, Steve Ross lives over there. He owns half of that. Okay. He owns the Miami Dolphins. He built a track around the Dolphins. Stevie, how about a mini track here in downtown again? It was successful for many years. And also we had offshore boat races off of Juno Beach. I don't know if you guys remember that. Those were really cool. The boats would go and then the helicopter would follow them. Anybody see those races? Weren't they cool? Remember that? They would race and then the helicopter was right down below chasing them, like filming them. It was really cool. But they didn't bring it back. So for you sport fans, we need to that's another committee. They're going to change the Harriet, but the Harriet did the same thing. It anchored everything around it. But now they're building 24, 20, 15 big buildings, and hopefully it won't change. I would hope it wouldn't change. But those are two good areas in our town. And the waterfront too. The waterfront was very sketchy. you know, for many, many years and neglected. And now it's beautiful, right? You can walk by there and, you know, you feel like you're in Battery Park in Lower Manhattan when you walk there. So those are three great areas, I think. Okay, Adam. Yes.
Are there other places like the Flagler that we can support that are preserving history and we can visit and support like that way?
Yes, the most important one would be the Historical Society of Palm Beach County. I do the walking tours for them, and they're the only ones that do it for almost 40 cities and towns in Palm Beach County, from Tequesta to Boca, from Palm Beach to Pahokee and Belle Glade, and they're the advocacy group. And then also I'm a member and very involved with the Florida Trust for Historic Preservation. And they're very important because, for example, we're trying to save the old Coconut Grove Playhouse in Miami. And so a lot of us from around the state have been coming down to Miami to fight the fight. And so the Florida Trust does a lot of statewide advocacy. So those are two, local and state.
What was the other one?
The Palm Beach County Historical Society. And they're right here, right downtown. The other one's in Tallahassee. Okay.
Thank you, Rick.
All right, thank you.